Welcome to Homemakers Chic podcast. We have a fantastic show for you today with someone very special and her first time on the show. And I'm a little worried there's going to be like some tears and a whole lot of sentimentality flowing. So steady yourself. It's going to be good. It's going to be beautiful. And we are so pleased. I'm Angela Reed of Parisian Farm Girl. You know my co-host Shay Elliott of the Elliott Homestead. And we are so pleased to announce our friend Dolores Alfieri Taranto is here with us today. And we're going to talk about, do we have like an official name, official subject? We're going to talk about preserving family legacy. Dolores, family heritage.
Well, yes, that. And I mean, I was hoping to ride some really wicked tangent with the two of you, which you're very good at doing.
Perfect.
Okay. To be quite honest.
We're going to go subject surfing.
I was hoping to completely wildly off topic, but no, yeah, that's the idea that we're going to focus on that.
Let me connect some dots here because you guys have actually heard me talk about Dolores many, many, many times. Dolores.
Yeah, she's like Darla and Rosemary. She gets mentioned all the time.
She gets mentioned all the time.
Yeah.
So Dolores and her husband Drew, their son Angelo, friend John, like that's who Stuart and Georgia and I went to Sicily with. 2 years ago.
Great trip.
2 years ago in August. So we got to spend 2 weeks together over there. So so that's this Dolores.
Here I am. I got to spend time in Italy with Shay, which I know so many of your listeners would love to do. It was a great time. It was one of those things that like actually came together and you're like, is this really actually happening? Like, did that happen? You know what I mean? Like stars have to align for something like that to happen. Like, I'm sure you and Angela have been talking for like, I don't know, 4 years about doing some kind of trip together with your families and like aligning, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so hard. And I couldn't believe it. And John Viola, who's Angela's godfather and a very dear friend of mine, also was able to come. It was just like, it was great. It was, we hope to recreate it, but
I don't want to say it was a once in a lifetime trip because I'm like,
myself,
right?
Nope. No.
You yell at me if I say that.
But very special.
Well,
very
it's great
special
to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. I was just telling both of them off mic that this is like my Oprah moment right here. I feel like I'm on Oprah like level.
And honestly, we just had a 20-minute conversation about bras.
That happens.
So again, we sort of picked up where we left off last week because I'm still obsessed with my new non-bra.
Yeah.
Oh, the struggle's real.
All right. Yeah. So before we get going, we're going to say thank you so much to today's sponsor, and that's Dry Farm Wines. No doubt you ladies visited some lovely vineyards when you were in Italy together. And we are always encouraging our audience, Dolores, to participate in the enjoyment of Dry Farm Wines. They can do that by visiting dryfarmwines.com/homemaker chic. First-time customers, you're going to get a bottle for a penny. Last week, we talked about the natural yeast that this wine is made with. And I know today I kind of want to switch to like the no sugar aspect of it, Shay. I know so many of our audience, they're mindful of what they put in their bodies. They want to enjoy a glass of wine with dinner. They don't want that sugar spike, especially at the end of the day. I think that's something that's really important to a lot of people. What are we talking? The residual sugar in a bottle of Dry Farm wine is like
0.2 grams in the whole bottle.
0.2 grams in the whole bottle.
To put that in context, a Sprite has 62 grams.
Yeah.
One
and
Sprite.
Really get out your food scale and dump 62 grams of sugar onto the food scale for a little real hardcore reality check there. So what they're doing is, or what they're not doing is they're not adding sugar to that fermentation process. It's a really big deal. And so subsequently, you've got a lower calorie wine. You have a lower alcohol content wine. You have no headaches, no bloat when you're done. You just get to have a beautiful glass of wine from Austria, Italy, France, South Africa, all over the world, these small family farms that are doing things in an old world method, which you know that I love. You get to enjoy that beautiful piece with your meal. So you should visit dryfarmwines.com/homemaker chic and treat yourself to a box. You can do a quarterly subscription, a monthly subscription. You can try 3 bottles. You can reboot the wine cabinet. Try 12. You're going to get 13 with that first order.
Did you ever watch Parks and Recreation, the show with Amy Poehler?
Nope,
should.
that's not on my list.
Okay, but there's a great character in that, Donna, and they do an entire episode on treat yourself. And it's just all these great things. You want to drink good wine? Treat yourself. You want to take a day off work? Treat yourself. That's what I always think of when people say that. Go YouTube it. Go look at that scene.
Okay.
It's so good. Treat yourself. Anyway, yes, dryfarmwines.com/homemaker chic. We have to, I know we're going to go on a tangent because that's all we are capable of. We are but human. However, Dolores, can you bring people into the fold of who you are, what you do, and kind of like, why are we having you on to talk about this idea of family heritage and tradition and preserving those things in our homes?
Great idea.
No pressure. Go.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go for this. Who are you? It's like $1 million question we're all facing. In short, I am the daughter of 2 Southern Italian immigrants who came to America in the late 1960s. So I grew up very much steeped in my ancestral culture. The traditions were a really big part of our life, the language, and I grew up a very, modern, free-spirited girl in New York in the 80s and 90s. But like the home life was totally different. My home life was very traditional. My home life was very old world. Subsequently, I kind of just developed this personality that's just like this mix of both, and this great passion for a lot of old world style, a lot of old world charm, which is kind of a bond between the 3 of us. And, we can really relate on those kind of things. Slow living, eating well. I like to joke that, my parents were farm to table and green and slow living before any of it was a thing. I grew up with the gardens. I grew up preserving food. I grew up reusing things because, that's just the way our ancestors have done those things forever. With that, fast forward, my father passed away when I was in my late 20s. And it was sudden and it was terrible and it was very tragic and heartbreaking for the entire family, of course. And I have been writing all my life, and it just kind of put in front of me this very real thing that we all have to face, which is our family stories, our family histories, who we are, where we come from. And by extension, if we have children, that's who our children are, right? Where they come from. Every time we lose somebody, we lose a treasure trove of these stories and these connections to where we've come from. And although I had spent so many evenings sitting next to my father at the kitchen table, listening to his stories and asking him to tell his stories, because I'm as a writer, I'm into stories. I just remember thinking, oh God, there's so much I didn't ask him, and it's gone. I mean, there's just no way around it. Thankfully, knock on wood, my mother's still with us. And I was like, I'm going to write these stories. And I really just embarked on a journey to talk to everyone I could, everyone who had known my ancestors, like my grandparents, my great grandparents, my family. And I started documenting and writing the story of my family's early life in Italy, immigration, and weaving through it my own experiences, kind of growing up with this tension of the old and new world. And through that, it's just extended into the platform that I have, Bella Figura podcast. And now I'm doing workshops where I teach other people how to write their family stories and gather their family stories and just focus. And the reason I do this is because I really do believe, especially here in America, that this knowledge of who we are and who we come from and where we come from anchors us. I think it gives us backbone. It gives us roots. It gives us strength. And it gives us this reserve to draw on in hard times and in good times. Like we're not just flailing around, not knowing who we are. We suddenly step into a long line of people who have come before us and are coming after us.
Well, at what point do you think Americans, like, they just go back to generations of Americans, right? So like we're still at the generation where your parents immigrated, grandparents immigrated, maybe great grandparents immigrated, but eventually, or in even some families now, I suppose, that doesn't necessarily go back somewhere else. It's actually here, right?
Meaning like the generations just get so there's so many generations between you and the original immigrants, or meaning like people
Right.
who's
Right.
Mayflower, literally. Okay.
Yeah. So like Stu's family, it's like we've traced it back. It doesn't go back anywhere in Europe until like the 1600s.
Oh, that's
Like they've been
amazing.
here for so long
That's
that they have a
wild.
heritage here that most Americans don't. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so cliche to say we're a melting pot, but dang it, we we really are. There, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
it's all
those are
over the
his
board.
ancestors. Yeah, I mean, that's the ancestry that I mean, you would trace and you would talk about and you would write about. But there's also the thing I encounter more with people is I'm third generation in America, or I'm, it was my great great grandparents who came here. And when it gets to that point, if you didn't have somebody like me or like you guys who I know are also interested in this, writing down the stories or somehow capturing the stories, they're lost. And now they're lost through 4 generations of people. So you can't, it's really hard to just call up an elderly family member and ask them about, the 3 generations before, because they don't know them. Now we have a lot of tools, right? We have Ancestry and there's people that you can hire and you can do research. But for a lot of us, my ancestors included, they were peasants and people who don't really make it into history. They're very
Right.
poor.
And
Mhm.
yeah. And even in hiring someone, it's the preciousness, I think, comes in the anecdotal, the more intimate stories.
Yes.
There's general knowledge, there's ship manifests, there's census records and things like that, but it's the anecdotal. I mean, I have so many stories from my grandpa. My grandpa's birthday was yesterday. He would have been 95. He passed away last August. And I can't, I mean, he would just sit and like start talking, and I would just try to like covertly type what he was saying on my phone. And I never wanted to make him feel like
Right.
awkward or anything.
Yeah.
But we even have an old laptop in the basement, like 18 years old. I need to send it away because on that hard drive is our stories where I did ask him, hey, remember when you told me about seeing a Napoleonic uniform in a trunk? Hey, remember when you told me about you and your dad hiding in the ditch from the tornado in the Model T? Like, hey, remember, like all those are written down somewhere. I think it's the anecdotal ones that, you said something a few minutes ago. You talked about like celebrating in the high points and something in the low points. And I think it's those like anecdotal stories that help us do that because we know what they've gone through. And so it helps us
Exactly.
celebrate the high points, and we know what they've suffered, and it helps us be kind of steadied in the low points because people have gone through things probably bigger than what we're going through or similar or have survived something. It girds us, when we have those stories.
Perfectly said. Yeah. I mean, my paternal grandmother lost 3 children before my oldest uncle was born, and then my father was born, and then my aunt. And I try to remember things like that when I'm stressing over, my HD camera didn't work as I'm about to sit down to record a podcast with 2 of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Surely this is not a problem. Like surely, and it's not just anecdotal, right? That's my DNA. Her experiences are in my body. And this is poetic. We have a poetic term for it called blood memory. That's a colloquial term for a field that's actually growing, the field of epigenetics, where they're literally studying this science of how memories of our ancestors and what they have been through get transmitted to us in our DNA. And it actually shapes who we are. It's trippy.
I heard this. I'm going to get these numbers like so wrong, but I did hear this factoid recently about why granddaughters are typically close with their maternal grandmothers. Did either of you see that on Instagram like in the last year or something? It's something to do, I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm not going to have a conclusive point here. But it's something to do with the eggs that are in your body when you're
Oh,
born?
yes. So your
It's something to, yeah. Dang, I wish I had
think I
it.
have I think I might be able to get it for you. If I'm I think
Okay.
it's your eggs were in your grandmother, possibly even your great grandmother when she was born. So
Yes, it's
I think
something
I
like
just
that.
got
It's like a,
yeah, I just got
yes,
chills.
it's like a physical, my
It's
grandmother and I have like a
yeah,
hardcore connection. Like,
yeah.
but to think that there's something actually like biological to pulling us
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it is
together
biological.
is,
I mean, your
well, I
genetic.
know that, but I mean like super intimate. Like I was
Yeah.
in her.
Like the
Like,
womb.
like,
Yeah. You were in
yeah.
so you were in no, I think it's more like your mother, the eggs that were passed on to your mother were in your grandmother when she was created. And of course, she was created in your great grandmother. So does that make sense? Like you were all kind of in the same body, and
That
the
doesn't make
eggs kind of
sense to
passed
me.
down.
That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I understand the
Tell me
egg
how.
thing
Like, tell me
because
why.
this is our rabbit
Okay.
trail.
It,
Because even though let's say your mom was in your grandmother as an egg, right? But like, does that egg have eggs inside? You know, like does there
no,
already
I
an
did.
egg in the egg? It makes sense for me that like you're in your mother.
I got it. I found it. I found it.
Oh,
So it
right.
might not be
Okay.
Google.
as, yeah,
Jamie,
I
look
found
it
it.
up.
It's not maybe as extensive as exactly. Exactly.
Totally forgot
It
about
says,
Google. That was great.
so I just,
I'm like, we'll never figure this
it
out.
says,
No,
yes, it's true that the egg that created you was
yes.
inside your mother while she was still growing in your grandmother's womb. So we've
Okay.
Oh
all
yeah, yeah,
three
yeah.
been together at once.
So great grandmother was
Yes.
me pushing it too far. Fine.
Yeah.
That makes
Way to
sense.
go,
Yeah.
Okay.
Dolores.
I try.
But that's so cool.
It's
That is
amazing. I mean,
That
it's
makes sense.
amazing.
so cool. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
if you're somebody who believes that, that your womb, especially as women, and like the reproductive life and your hormones and all that are actually, something that you can be in tune with, it gets even deeper, right? Like now you're really,
Mhm.
you're connecting on a very deep level. But those things you can say like, well, it's just science or something, but we
Mhm.
have so much is in those eggs. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
like so much of who we are as women and what makes us up, and to know that we've shared that in that way, it just gets passed
Mhm.
through us.
Yeah.
Even more so, there's a lot of research, and a lot of this is more in like the field of psychology, so it can be like up for debate, that if there's a whole field called family constellations that focuses on healing intergenerational family trauma. And a lot of what people who do this work find is, we all have like these things that we do that we can't kind of stop doing. Like we try so hard. Like it could be from something big like drinking, or it can be something small like I get really frustrated when I'm doing X. And what people who do this work find is if you know your stories, and even if you don't, that's kind of the downside, right? A lot of the
Mhm.
times it's an ancestral pattern that we're repeating, and
Mhm.
we don't know, and so we can't stop doing it because we're taking on the unfinished business, the story of somebody who came before us. And a lot of the theory with that is things like depression and addiction and anxiety are related to this.
Is that like a nature nurture thing? Because I think about if you're raised in a home, let's say, where,
Mhm.
you have a parent with anger issues.
Yeah.
Like you probably will have anger issues just because you have been in their environment and you see, oh, this is how you respond to certain things. Or is there something more at play there? Would an adopted child, let's say, in that same situation come out with potentially the same issues? You
There's
know what I
actually a
mean?
lot of stories about like the adopted stories are really wild.
Mm,
I don't have any like that I can like point you to an exact
Yeah.
study right now off the top of my head, but I've read a lot of them, and that is particularly amazing because they don't get raised in their ancestral families. But if they find out later on and make connections, you're like,
they're
you
like,
grew up in a
ah,
family. You're like, you grew up in a family that is really bookish and everybody can play an instrument really well. And you're the jock in the family and nobody else can even, catch a Frisbee. And then you find out that your birth family,
They were
all
ultimate Frisbee players.
all athletes, right? All that happens. That
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
That happens often.
Yeah.
Happens a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's like emotional and, you know, physiological, I mean, think about like the gene mutation test, Shay. Think about the predispositions you have to whether it's racing thoughts or
Yeah.
addictions or whatever based on which gene mutations you have. That's passed down. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's nature and nurture for
It's
sure.
probably both. I think one of the most powerful
Mhm.
things about understanding the stories of things is we can look at old people, grandparents, great-grandparents, and just think they're just old or they're just this way. And when you start to dig into their stories and understand it as part of your story, all of a sudden it connects a lot of dots because a lot of times we're coming in as super young children, we're around our grandparents, let's say, they've lived an entire life. They've lived 60, 70 years already
Right.
of a lot. And especially and uniquely, I think, to our generation, our grandparents lived through World War II, lived through the Depression, lived through Vietnam. I mean, they have seen things and been a part of things. Now, I don't know what those things will be like for our grandchildren, but it helps you to understand who they are, why they ended up where they are. And I think what you do is that's so powerful, Dolores, is you're saying, look, their conversations, their old hard drives, there are a few pictures that survived a house fire, they're clippings of a newspaper article. You have to bring them together. Like, it's a treasure hunt for part of it. And then at some point, that story needs to have a framework. And it needs to, all those pieces, puzzle pieces, need to be put together into something that's cohesive, in something that our children can interact with and participate in so that they can understand those things,
Right.
If mom has a few things shoved away in a trunk and this uncle has this and this great aunt, well, she's got this missing piece, but there's no cohesive story, it gets
Right.
very confusing.
Yeah.
And that's when
somebody's gotta do the work.
somebody has to do the work. Otherwise, it just slips through the cracks.
Yes, yes. And something I like to remind people when, especially we do, the workshops or people just message me with questions, looking for a little inspiration and such, is that don't forget that you're also an ancestor. At some point, you will be gone. And it could be 2, 3 generations. It could be your great granddaughter. It could be your great great niece who has this kind of passion, who wants to know where she came from and learn a little bit more. And so it's also you documenting your story as an ancestor. I mean, what I would give that my like great aunt had sat down and wrote about my family. Maybe she just did it because she wanted to know about our family, but it would also be a gift to me all these generations later. So you're doing it for that reason too. I mean, I would think you both are such formidable women. You forged such creative and independent lives. Like, I mean, it's so much. This is the ironic thing, is so much of your lives is already documented, like online in the business that you do, which is the same with me. I think about this a lot. But let's say it wasn't, I would think that your great great grandchildren would love to know the stories about their great great grandmothers, let alone their 4 greats,
That was my next question to you, is like, does this stop being relevant after our generation? Because they could be like, oh, look what my great aunt had for breakfast on May 7th, 2022. Like, our lives are so documented.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
they're not
not.
intimately documented.
They're not intimately
That's,
documented.
what you and I do, it's curated.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. And like we talked about this in last week's episode, Angela. We were talking about digital detox, and like we have all these stories and notes and files, but like you're one computer crash away from those being just totally obsolete.
Yeah.
Like,
Or like who goes on MySpace anymore? I mean, what if you had documented your whole life
right,
on MySpace? Now
right.
what?
Now what?
Right.
Mhm.
No, I'm not hoping that like, or even saying the platforms that you guys like support your families are gonna go defunct. But
Yeah, no, but I know what you mean. Like, to me,
but
there's a
I don't,
reason,
you know,
like, the Bible is like, it's written. It's a written word. Like, through
Mm-hmm.
all the
right.
centuries that have passed, there is a reason why the written word preserves and it stays and
Yep.
it has stayed.
Correct. Right.
Um,
And they say that I've read before that they say the most cherished family heirloom is the family Bible.
mm, mhm,
And normally in a family, or not the most cherished, I should say, the most passed down. So the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Like prevalent.
mhm,
Hmm.
And often in those Bibles is a lineage.
mhm.
Right? Who
Who
the
was
different
born?
generations that it
Yep.
who was
Mhm.
born, who died, the
Mm-hmm.
different generations that it belonged to. And I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it, right? It's this written thing that you can hold, right?
Yeah. That you can
It's
just,
not in the
yeah,
cloud,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
I
Right.
actually, when I started digging into this stuff, myself for my family, because, I have two sides. I have my mom's side, which has its own history. I have my dad's side, which has its own history. And I started poking around to like a few of my great aunts still live, a few of my great uncles still live. I got to show you this. This is crazy. Somebody along the way, and I don't even know who it was on my mom's side, they actually did this genealogy.
Oh,
So
amazing.
like, but a lot of it doesn't make sense to me, so I have to piece through it. But there's letters, there's really great like
Oh,
documents in
wow.
there that somebody pulled out of a chest, and it was like my great grandpa signing away allegiance to the King of Norway when he became
Oh my
an
gosh.
American. And
Cool.
actually he came in through
Mm-hmm.
Canada like most Norwegians did, but he was just like, I will no longer, But look at this. This was what my mom gave me, and she just had it sitting in a chest. It says, those of you watching on video, Grandma and Grandpa
Mm.
Larson's trip out west. It's literally their diary of coming out in a wagon.
Are you kidding
That's
me?
all so cool.
No,
See, that's just so
but
great.
it's just
That
like
is
this,
so great.
it's just this little file that lives in here.
And I just want to pause you for a second because I just had like came through me. You just mentioned I think a grandfather who you have documents of him
Mm-hmm.
relinquishing his allegiance to the king.
Mm-hmm.
You have documents of ancestors who came out west
Mm-hmm.
in wagons,
Mm-hmm.
very arduous, very brave. And now you're out there and you're doing this very hard work, this very brave work. Like, if you put that all together for your kids, like, again, I have chills. Like, your kids, like, I'm like getting choked up for you. Like, that is like, that's who they come, that's what's in
That's
them.
who they come
That's
from.
strength.
Mm-hmm.
That's bravery.
Yeah.
That's like going out into the middle of nothing and with your own hands and your own bravery, making something,
Mm-hmm.
being strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's in them.
Oh
And they
yeah.
need to know that
Oh
for
yeah.
the hard times, especially.
And the sacrifice.
Yeah.
I mean, your parents are a perfect example of this, but like my great grandma left Norway alone. She left her parents behind and her sisters behind, and they lived there for, but I'm like, she didn't leave because she was like, I want to see someplace new. She left because
Right.
people
Right.
were starving to death.
Correct. Yes. Right.
And she
Right.
was like, it's
Mm.
better that I become an indentured servant to get my, boat trip paid for and never see my
Mm.
family again and go to a country where I don't speak the language and I don't know anybody. That's somehow the best option.
It's wild.
Like,
It's
we,
unbelievable.
we can't even begin to comprehend, I don't think, um, when we're talking about hard times, like we're not talking about my house is a mess or like
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to
Let's-
do for
yeah.
work. We're having different conversations. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Sobering.
Um, this is a really funny little anecdote, but like my grandpa, I loved my grandpa, and this is my grandpa T, my mom's dad. He would put saltine, or he would get Oreo cookies. This is even better. He would take Oreo cookies and he would smear them with butter. Like just layer it on.
him.
And that's what he would eat, plates of buttered Oreos. And I remember even as a kid going to my mom being like, what is his problem? Like, who does that? And she
Yeah.
was explaining to me, like, you see this a lot in this generation that went through the depression, where it
Yeah.
was like, you got to eat while you can eat. And like that piece of them never really fully left.
Yeah. Yeah.
It-
This is another aspect of these family stories that is very important to me. So it's yes for it's for you, your descendants, your children, absolutely. Nothing has helped me understand my own personal experiences better than learning my ancestors' experiences. And I'll give you an example. I shared this example on Mother's Day on Instagram, and people just, it seemed to strike a chord. My mother grew up very poor in southern Italy, and she was really raised by her mother by herself. Her father was kind of like half absent, half negligent, and abusive when he was around. The stories are heartbreaking, very emotional stories. And when she was little, she says she remembers, there were small villages, and she remembers that when she was little, they would play out in the street, her and the other kids. And every night when it got dark, all of the kids would be called in by their parents. They would yell out the window, "Concetta, mangia," vieni, come in, time to come eat. And she said that my nonna never called her in, and she would be the last kid standing out there. And it broke her heart. It made her feel like my grandmother didn't love her and didn't care about her. And she, to this day, she doesn't really know why that was. She thinks, it could be that my grandmother knew my mother was not doing anything wrong, right? That my grandmother was just tired, that it just wasn't her. She knew she was safe, and it just wasn't her character. But fast forward to my childhood and my siblings, my mother was really tough. She was very strict and old school. And if we went out and it got late and we did not come back home, when we came home, she would be sitting outside in the dark waiting for us. Or not me, and I'm not going to mention who, but I have some siblings who were extremely rambunctious, and she would get in the car. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the night, and she would go driving around town looking for them. And as a kid, as a teenager especially, all my American friends were doing whatever they wanted. They were staying out as late as they wanted, and getting credit cards to buy new clothes on top of it, right? So for me, it was just like, this stinks. But when I learned this story, that one story in particular, I made the connection, and I realized, for my mother waiting up for me like that, calling out for me, showing the world that I was loved, that there was somebody who was looking for me when the sun went down. That was the absolute highest form of love for her. Because of what she had gone through. That was her highest expression of showing us that we were loved in this world. Now, I could have spent the rest of my life resenting my mother for, quote, treating me that way. But I learned where it was coming from, and something that was very hard for me transmuted into something that is love. And that's really the power of these stories. Like that really, it can absolutely heal us and transform how we look at our past.
I have kind of a similar story. I'm sorry, Mom. But when I got caught being a little rambunctious, let's say, in my younger years before I was 21.
And then you stopped at 21, just stopped being rambunctious?
No, but it became legal.
But she's just giving us some insight as to the type of rambunctiousness she's talking about.
But I remember like thinking, oh, this isn't like that big of a deal, Mom. Chill out, chill out. And she had never told me this story before, but she sat me down and she was like, listen, this is a problem in our family, and explained to me the history of her life and her dad's life with alcohol. And it was like, I'm not coming to this neutral. I'm coming to this with this whole past of me being your age and understanding these things in a completely different way. And I'll spare the details, but you know, it wasn't a neutral thing for her. Like you said, for me, it was just like, what's the big deal?
Right.
That's
For
amazing that
her,
she
it
did
was a
that.
big deal.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
was a big
And
deal. And she had to explain that story to me to make sense of like, this is why I am the way I am about this.
it's a smart
Mm-hmm.
mom. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you, like you said, you don't know
Right. Yep.
unless you know.
Le-
You don't
And
know
you
where
know,
that's coming from.
I don't know too much, unfortunately. I mean, I know a decent about my grandmother, but she died before I was born. I was named after her, and I do feel like a kind of through the veil affinity with her. But I I won't unfortunately know why she was some of the ways that she was, but also by extension, I can just obviously assume that her own upbringing, you
Mhm.
know, had something, right? There was somebody who was maybe a little bit like the way she was, and you can kind of, with that in mind, like, I mean, did it sober you up? Like, not even just like physically, but like, did it snap you out of
It gave me
your
context.
behavior
Yeah, it
context?
gave me
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
context. And with
Context.
context comes understanding.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Like, you're playing with fire here.
Yeah.
Here's a lineage of stories that I know in this department.
Mhm.
You should know
Or,
this.
it's funny, like these stories, like my grandpa smoked. A lot of people smoked back in the 80s and 90s. Um, I loved the smell of smoke because it smelled like my grandpa, and like I
Yeah.
remember holding his hand and like I remember smelling it. It just smelled like,
Aw.
Marlboro cigarettes. But like it was a nice smell to me.
Yeah.
But I remember becoming an adult and well, of course I remember pieces of this, but it wasn't ever anything he talked about the war. But I remember finding articles about the war after he had passed away. After he passed away, my family found two Purple Hearts in his garage that no one knew he had.
I think you mentioned this to me before, and that is stunning.
It's just crazy. But it
And
was
what does it
funny
tell
because,
you about him
well, I
that he didn't even
remember
tell you
reading the
guys?
articles and being like, he was a prisoner of war. He barely made it out alive. Like, there's a picture of him on like, what's the day? The day the war
D-Day?
ended. No,
Oh.
the day where it
Oh,
ended. Oh, I'm
VE
totally
Day.
blanking.
it,
Anyway,
yeah, you just said it.
what is it?
VE Day.
Okay,
VE Day.
VE
VE
Day.
Day.
I was
Thank
gonna
you.
say
Mhm.
JV Day. I'm like, that's not right.
I know. I was on the tip of my tongue. There's a picture of him and his group of friends. They look like skeletons. And
Mm.
I remember him, he has a cigarette in his hand. And I'd be like, I thought, God, I would have smoked too. I would have smoked
Oh,
too.
that just went
Okay.
right to my heart.
Like,
Just
Right.
went
we
right to
can
my
look at
heart.
that now.
Yeah.
Oh, what a bad
Yeah.
habit. Oh, my grandpa smoked. Da, da, da. I'm like, nah,
I
smoke
would
all
have
you want.
smoked too. Yeah.
I want to
That's
smoke
Right.
too.
so well
Like,
said.
you're in a foxhole, you're
Mm-hmm.
in a prisoner of war. You don't have
Right.
food. You
Yeah.
don't have food. You have
What
cigarettes.
pleasure.
Maybe.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
There's
Maybe.
this great story by, I can't remember the author right now. And she was talking about her grandfather. I'll make it short. And how growing up, everybody it's in a book of Italian writing, Italian American writing, and they called him oh God, it was a dialect word for the drunk, and I can't remember what dialect it was, but they used to call him that.
Mm.
The drunk. It was like Southern Italian culture has a lot of like affinity for nicknames, so it's not as offensive as it sounds, but it's still kind of offensive. And how she would like, it really bothered her and blah blah. And she tells, it's really well written, and at the end it's his funeral, and she starts doing her own research, and she basically goes back far enough to realize that when he was young, he would work in the fields, like a dog, starving. Everybody was starving and they were working in the hot sun. And the only thing the padrones would really give them, there wasn't a lot of water. So they would give them wine to drink. And the wine would kind of keep them, in check and calm. And her whole connection point was like, yeah, I would
Yeah.
be drinking a lot of wine too, if from the time I was like 13, drinking wine
Mm-hmm.
was, like we were drinking wine at work and
Mhm.
so it's absolutely that too. You're kind of flippant about these habits that people you grew up with have and such, and then you get illuminated as to why they're like that, and it totally transforms how you look at it.
Mhm.
It's magic.
Oh, so good. Okay, we're not
Mm.
done yet. But
It's good, good, good.
we do need to say thank you to Homemaker Chic sponsors. Let's start with Tupes and Co. Visit tupesandco.com, use code HMC10 for 10% off your purchase. This is a family-run business out of Fairhope, Alabama. Whoop whoop. That's where we used to live. I've known Emily for a long time, and one of the things that's so distinctive about Emily is her quality. Her standards for quality are so high. And that's why she started Tupes and Co, so that she could have products that she could use, that her children could use. So nothing with toxins or fillers or artificial colors, nothing with artificial fragrances, nothing harmful that's going to disrupt your hormones or disrupt your skin and put it into a state of inflammation, just real nourishing skin products. So use the sea buckthorn cleansing oil. Sea buckthorn cleansing oil. Wash your face with that. It'll take all your makeup off. Try the French clay soap. Try the tallow charcoal soap. Try the tallow balm on your elbows and on your gardening hands. And it doesn't stop there. You can, of course, shop for all their makeup as well. So foundations, concealers, mineral makeups, luminizers, and bronzers, all kinds of wonderful things without any chemicals. And again, without any sorts of preservatives. We had Emily on the podcast. When was that, Angela? 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, she's going to be on in a few weeks too.
And she shed light on what preservatives are labeled as and what they do.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. So maybe we'll need to address that when she comes back on again. But you can just
a
feel,
refresher.
yeah, really good about what's in these. All the ingredients are listed. Check out the reviews. People give very thoughtful reviews of these products. Find the ones that are right for you. Tupesandco.com. Use the code HMC10 for 10% off.
I love all your
All right.
sponsors. I feel like I should chime in, but I'm like giving.
Right?
But I
They're
use
good.
Them, I use them all. Yeah, and I'm like, they really are great.
Good.
That's what we tell people. No, really. No, really.
No, really.
I drink Dry
So-
Farms. I use Tubes and Co. All
Right?
great. Yeah. Facts.
So while we're talking about, passing down legacies, something that is really special to me. If you guys watch my YouTube channel, like my house is filled with things that belonged to my family.
Yeah.
The things are a way that I feel like I stay connected to my ancestors. And so I'm a sucker for anything of heirloom quality. That's where American Blossom Linens comes in. Because what they've done, this company that made hotel sheets for 125 years, they make heirloom quality sheets and linens and blankets, everything you need for your linen closet for their domestic line. And I love this idea. We live in such a disposable world. Everything's just disposable. You buy it off Amazon, 18 months later, 36 months later, you're getting rid of it. You're burning through it. And I love the idea of buying once. These sheets are designed to last a lifetime. They have a 2-year happiness guarantee. The king and queen sizes come with extra pillowcases. So there's extra. Love that extra room on the fitted sheet. And they're not going to get tossed, they're not going to get tossed in the rubbish pile in a few years. These are heirloom quality. And maybe you'll be able to pass them on to people that you love. American Blossom carries duvets, blankets, crib sheets, baby blankets. There's a herringbone cotton blanket that I insist you put on your beds. Everyone in my family has one. It's like that perfect heaviness. So not too heavy, not too light, not too
It's so
warm,
nice.
not too cool. It's the perfect blanket. I'm telling you. Everything about American Blossom is made in America. So from the cotton fields to the beautiful package that shows up on your front door. So visit AmericanBlossomLinens.com. And this is your code for 20% off because we want to be, we're running a home economy. So we want to be mindful of our budget. Use this code SummerChic20 for 20% off. Thank you to American Blossom, long time sponsor of the show, AmericanBlossomLinens.com, SummerChic20. I'm blessed to come from a family has a long history of documentation. So I grew up, my grandparents had a farm, and that was like our Hyannis port. That was ground zero for all of us. And I grew up as young as I can remember. My aunt, we would get together, like say for Labor Day weekend, Labor Day, Memorial, and Christmas were the givens. 4th of July, probably. Easter sometimes, Thanksgiving sometimes. And then intermittent, just, small visits, individual families in between all the time. But I grew up with, on one of those nights, we would order pizza, and my aunt would stack up books on top of the coffee table and get out the slide projector. And my aunt would put on slideshows to music. So it was like Kenny Rogers, Crystal Gale, and we'd cry and we'd laugh. And it was all the photos from that year.
That's nice.
And that, we have a family cookbook where all the cousins and all the aunts got great grandma's recipes together, and then all the church potluck, it's like potluck food, and they put a cookbook together. And we have my grandma's side and my grandfather's side, maternal, each have a family tree that the families made. And it's documented like when the great grandparents or great great grandparents came over, where they came from, all the cousins, the mindset of recording that is, I'm really blessed. It's there on both sides of my maternal family in particular.
Yeah, you are. You're
And
fortunate.
and it just keeps going. Like, we all took up scrapbooking. I have a full Ancestry.com account. With as far back as I can go. I can only go back so far on my grandpa's side because his grandfather was a stowaway. So that's actually a dream of mine, is actually to go to Switzerland and like knock on doors and find a family that had a kid that just went missing. I want to know, like, because it stops. There's no, it was a stowaway. It just stops.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so my grandpa passed away last year, just so precious to me. As I said, I'm really close to my grandma. And about, I'm assuming 8 years ago, we're all still waiting on the project, but my cousin sat down. He's a professional videographer. And my cousin sat down with my grandparents and in their living room before they sold the farm, while they still were young enough to articulate. And he did a full interview with them.
That's great.
And we're all waiting on it still. I want to see it so bad, but I've heard that it's
Is
a
he
doozy.
editing it, or is he?
Yeah,
Is he holding
I'm
on
sure
to
it's
it
just a
for reason?
procrastination thing.
Oh, okay.
He's got it. I don't know what I don't know what the hang up is. I don't want to toss him under the bus on a show. My cousin's probably listening. His sister's probably
Get on that,
listening.
Get it together.
I don't mean it like that. I just mean like,
Right.
yo, chop chop. Like, we've heard about this. We want to see it.
Right,
Grandpa's
okay.
gone now. We want to see this. But I'm really blessed that way, that it's like instilled in me to gather and preserve.
Yeah.
And my grandma's got a box of letters. They had a hired hand on the farm. And when World War II broke out, I'm a super World War II history buff.
Oh my
I love it. I
gosh.
can't get enough. The hired hand was a German, and he's like, I'm out of here. That's our man. And he went and fought for Hitler.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, to not to be fair, but to be fair, like, from his vantage point, Germany was such a mess after all the
Right.
restrictions from World War I. He just thought, this is our guy. And he would write back. He would write back in German. So my grandma has these letters, and they're in German, and they don't know what they spoke some German, but not enough. And so now, like, when we go, we take like Google Translate and hold it over, and it's just mind blowing to my grandma, because now it's like coming around full circle. She's had this letter for 60 years, and now she's got great granddaughters that are interested in what this letter says, and they have the technology to read it. And it's just so cool. I feel so blessed. There's just paper trail after paper trail, photographs.
That's amazing.
I've taken my great grandparents' photographs and done that deep fake. Like,
Do
the
you mean
little
the
just
face
five.
where? Yeah.
And so I can get my grandma's face to like move.
Yeah.
And I've shown my grandma, I'm like, this is your mom. Isn't that cool? Like, just to see her moving again. I don't know. I'm a nerd. I love it.
I
love
did
it.
that with my
I'm
with
so
my
blessed to
maternal
have all
grandmother.
that.
It's amazing. That is amazing. You're very lucky. I have literally the exact opposite experience. There is like zero paper trail. Can I tell you something? My mother doesn't even know her grandparents' names.
Wow.
That's how much it's just broken. And I ask her and she doesn't really have answers. She's like, I don't know. We didn't think of these things. Like I didn't know them. My mother never spoke about
Yeah.
them. You know, then again, in her defense, she left Italy when she was like 18.
Yeah.
She just said, we just didn't think about these things. They were just,
Well,
Let me
it just
ask you
wasn't part
this,
of her life.
Dolores.
it's a luxury for us too. Like they're surviving. We
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
Yeah.
this crazy modern luxury of
Right.
free time, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
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 What about people whose family history and the heritage is not good?
Yeah.
I feel like that's all of us in some way. I mean, somewhere along
Some
the
of
line,
yeah,
there's
we all
usually
have
something
branches
that went
that are
bad.
yeah.
Can you be more specific? Like somebody who killed somebody, or like your
Yeah. I mean,
grandfather
like
had slaves?
Okay,
Or
no.
both?
sure.
Sure.
I
I
mean,
mean, both. I mean, obviously the slave
both.
thing is a
Yeah.
big thing in the South,
Yeah.
you know, and I think people are confused about how to deal with that. But I
Yeah.
also think, you know, a lot of us have grandparents or great grandparents that were involved in World War II. And like, there's one thing people are fairly united on in history, and that it's like the Nazis were bad, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
the Nazis, the peoples, like that's millions of people's heritage. And I think we
Right.
feel this need maybe to defend, or this need to shun. And it seems like
Yeah.
maybe we
I know
need
what you're
to
saying.
find the middle ground there.
So I'll give you an example. One of the very few actual like documents or artifacts that we have of any of our ancestors is my paternal grandfather. My paternal grandfather was a prisoner of war in World War II in Ethiopia. Now he fought for the Italian army, and we have a certificate that is like thanking him for his service and, you know, acknowledging his prisoner of war status, and it's signed by Mussolini. He fought
Mm-hmm.
for Mussolini.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know from my mother, she says that she remembers when she was younger, they were here in America, but she remembers when my grandfather would come here, and she said if we were sitting at the table and he started talking about the war, that she would get up and leave because she was like, he just wouldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning, you know, up until the end, he was defending Mussolini.
Mm-hmm. And if people don't
As
know the context, like Italy sided with Germany eventually. And
right, yeah,
yeah.
And there's
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even gonna say that. Okay. I was like trying to not step on any third rails. Yeah. So so in a nutshell, yes. So
Mhm.
what do I do with that? I mean, he's my grandfather. He made my father, who made me, and I don't disown him. I actually think it's pretty amazing because it's a huge part. I mean, Angela, as you were talking about World War II as well, and Shay, you had, you know, war
Mhm.
connections. Like this is part of world history. It's part of our personal histories. And the fact of the matter is, my grandfather grew up in southern Italy where people were invaded by northern occupiers. They were starving.
Mhm.
They were poor. I mean, frankly, in the regions where my family was, they were being, you know, women were being raped, children were being killed. It was bad times. And so, yeah, I mean, I can totally put myself, I mean, not totally put myself in his shoes, but I can look at
Mhm.
history and see a man who grew up like that, of fighting age, who went off to war. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if he hadn't supported Mussolini and fought
Mhm.
for him.
Yeah. You have somebody
It's
coming and
just
saying, we're going to take
context.
care of this. We're going to get
Yeah.
this back on track.
Yeah.
And you think,
Correct.
okay,
You know,
okay.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I never got to talk to him about things like that. I was way too young when he passed away. But like if he was here now, I would probably talk to him a little bit more about that. You know, Grandpa, do you know this other side of Mussolini? Like,
Mhm.
was it just propaganda you were reading? You know, I mean, but I don't have
Mm-hmm.
that luxury, and so we just kind of. I think we should acknowledge and own our ancestry. I don't personally feel responsible for it.
Yeah.
Right.
The rest is
Yeah, I
history,
don't think
guys. They
shunning
always
is
say, like, you can't look at past times with modern glasses, or a version that
right.
thereof. You just can't.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's a I don't love this expression, but like a victim of their age, of their era.
Of their
They
time.
were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think shunning is right. I think it's good to have, you know, just a element of pragmatism and curiosity. And
Good word, pragmatism. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was like
Yeah.
thinking like I have this, I don't want to say distance, but it's just like a fact. That's who my grandfather was. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, and there's going to be, you know, in everybody's family tree, there'll be pain, you know, with what you're talking about the South, you have the pain of African Americans today that cannot do their genealogy past a certain point.
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
Mhm.
that's devastating.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
then
Well,
and then you
and there's
have
also, sorry, Angela, go ahead.
no, just, you know, then again, then you have the sh- the shame, pain, embarrassment, whatever of maybe coming from a family that had slaves, you know, like that.
Correct.
What are you going to do with that, you know?
Yeah.
But it can be any family. I mean, did you see recently? I love these shows like Finding Your Roots and Genealogy Roadshow. And there was
Yeah.
recently I saw a clip of oh my gosh, how am I blanking on his name? Oh my gosh.
Was it a famous
The
person?
guy, yeah, the guy who does the HBO show. Oh my God, Curb Your Enthusiasm. What's his name?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah, yeah.
have that. I don't
You
know.
know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Okay.
Larry
Come
David.
on.
Yeah,
Larry David.
we know.
I'm
Yeah.
spacing. Okay,
Mhm.
so Larry David, there's a clip. Now, Larry
Seinfeld.
David
That's how I
is,
know it.
yeah, Larry David is Jewish
Yeah, he just had a
ancestry
big reveal, didn't he?
of the ancestry or
Yeah,
something
or
else.
something.
Yeah, it
No,
was
you
a big
finish. I'm sorry.
deal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so he's Jewish, you know, Hollywood type, very in terms of being like very liberal, very vocal Democrat lefty. And sure enough, he's sitting there and they're revealing his genealogy to him. And his grandfather, I think it was, or maybe great grandfather, was a slave owner.
Mm.
You have to see this clip. He wants to like melt and just drip away. He's mortified and stunned. But it's like that's history, you know, like is I know Larry David has very different values than his great grandfather, if I have that right, who
Mhm.
held slaves. He also lives in a really different time. Like, is he
Mhm.
responsible for
No.
for those things? Now, you can make the argument that he has benefited perhaps by the, you know, the financial gains that were made by
Mhm.
having an ancestor who had free labor, quote unquote, you
Mhm.
know, but that's a different, that's a way bigger topic for my abilities, you know, but in terms of
Mhm.
like spiritually, I think, you know, that's your ancestor. I don't know how it serves you to disown them, although you can be disappointed in their behavior, right? And you can be
Yeah.
curious about
Mhm.
it.
Okay, slight rabbit trail here. What are your thoughts? I don't know how we're doing on time. I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on like the physicality that you're carrying through biologically? So like, oh, you have your grandmother's eyes. Oh, you
Mm,
have long fingers, like, so and so. Like, do you think in this world of just like plastic surgery and makeup
mm,
and contouring and blah blah hair coloring, like we're erasing kind of these pieces of ourselves that
yeah,
reflect our
yeah,
ancestors? Like I
yeah.
was looking up, for some reason I was looking up the other day, like Scandinavian physical traits. And it sounds like all the things that like we don't think of as beautiful in America. It's like tall, lanky, angular, like like straight noses, just straight
Yeah.
hair, blah blah blah. It's not like these voluptuous, beautiful Brazilian types, okay? Um, but it just made me think like physically, I carry through the manifestation of these genetics, the biological
100%.
manifestation of these genetics.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of women in Hollywood who get plastic surgery and they take away their nose or their bone structure or their lack thereof. Like
Mhm.
that's them. That's a reflection of them. And maybe that's that's also a bigger fish to fry, but it's just the thought, like, what is physically reflected in us that tells our ancestor stories?
I think on like my best days, I embrace the way I look based exactly on that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I'm definitely a product of the society we live in, and
Yeah.
I have many things that I wish I could change about myself, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
everything you just described as a flaw. I would like to be taller. I would like to be
Angular.
more angular. I
Straight
would like to be
nose.
lankier. I would like a straight nose. I have none of those things, and I would like those things. So, you know, I mean, I have talked about this before
Oh, that's funny.
on Instagram a bunch too, and in posts that, you know, that when you can't find love for your body, you should remember that that your ancestors gave up their bodies to make yours,
Mm.
and that it is
Yeah.
literally an amalgamation of them and their sacrifices, and hopefully that brings you a bit of peace with the way that you look. And
So this goes full circle back to the boobs, because we were talking about before the show started. Like, we
And I was
literally,
like, I don't think we recorded that part.
I had very nice breasts
and we weren't going to bring it up.
before I nursed 4 children. And then I
Right.
spent, I don't know, 6 years nursing my children. Like, it's exactly what you
A
said. Like,
decade.
now I've got C-section scars
Bless you guys.
and marks
Yeah.
and breasts that are a full womanly expression of having given my body to my children.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
I mean, we expect to show no marks of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the same thing. I'm now 8 months. Can I still say postpartum? Is 8 months still
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
postpartum? I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm now 8 months postpartum with my second son, and my body is, you know, obviously I'm still healing and it takes time, but you know, I know there's things that are just, they're going to be like this. You know, they might get a
Yeah.
little better and a little, you know, tighter and a little
Mhm.
lighter, I hope. But you know, you can't have 2 pregnancies, 2 C-sections, and want no trace of that. And
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
the real question we should be asking ourselves is, why would we want that? Like, why would we want no trace of that transformation,
Yeah.
right? And I know why, because
Yeah.
of the society and like
It looks
all
better in a
these-
bikini.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Right.
I want to wear, you know, jeans and a bodysuit, and I want to, you know, all like, but it's all exactly part of this same story, which is, you know, I take my shape. I know I'm not standing up, but I'm short. I have a very like kind of muscular frame, and my shape is literally equivalent to every male and female in my family,
Mm-hmm.
and also in like our extended family, and also our family friends who come from Southern Italy. This is what Southern Italians mostly look like,
Mhm.
right? It's a short,
Mm-hmm.
stocky, I have really wide arms, like a gymnast. Like, so there's different body types, like an endomorph. Is it endomorph? I'm forgetting them right now, but there's different types. And like, so for me, I can pick up, you know, the same amount of weights as you half the time, and I'll get twice as much muscle
Mm-hmm.
than you will, or you being the
Mhm.
universal you.
You know
And
what's
that,
so funny about this, Dolores, is when we left Sicily, we had a
Oh, I
layover
know.
in the Netherlands,
yeah.
and we got out in the airport. We had just enough time to grab dinner, and I'm walking around the airport. I was like, everyone looks like me.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
See,
I
where in
hadn't
Italy, you were
realized
like
because
towering.
I was just like a monster in Italy. And I'm not tall, by the way. I'm only 5'7".
Yeah.
But like, I'm taller than most men in Southern Italy.
Yeah. Well, you're
And
taller than my husband. You're taller than, I think, John, definitely.
yeah,
Like,
they kept coming
and
to me and they're like, you're so
Hmm.
tall. You're so tall. But in Amsterdam, I was like pretty short, you know,
yeah,
because
yeah,
we've had genetically, we've had other things happen since
exactly.
then. But it was just so funny when it was like all of a sudden you're looking around and everybody's features are the same as yours.
Yes, right. So I can
It's
hate that about myself, and of course, I will admit that I do sometimes, like many women. But I bring myself back by, you know, by recognizing it's literally who and what I come from. And there's also, you know, there's genetic reasons. I mean, everybody before, well, my parents too. I mean, everybody before my siblings and I worked in the fields, or
Mm-hmm.
at the very least worked in factories. There was nobody sitting at desks. Nobody wore suits and ties. They were hardworking people who had to go out and lift things and carry things and dig things. And it's just a fact that there's adaptations for that.
Mhm.
And I clearly have a body shape of somebody who can like who is short and small, but can like probably carry you a long distance if I need to.
I think the term for that, like breeding stock, you're
Strong
you know,
like bull.
Yes. Yep.
Strong like bull. I've got that Germanic. My arms are thick. My legs are thick. All the women in my
Yes.
family like max out at 5'4", you know.
We have similar, yeah.
Yep.
And I'll tell you a really quick, very interesting story about this. My brother, Anthony, is named after my mother's brother who died tragically when she was only like 13. And he was like kind of the only father figure that she'd had. And we only had, for my entire life, we only had like one photo of him. And somebody must have come through town with like one of those old brownie box cameras, and they used to like take photos and, you know, come back whatever a month or two later and bring you the photo, and that must have been the only photo like he had ever taken. So you only have this one picture of him. And then we went to Italy one year when my mother's sister was still alive, and she had all these photos, and here was one of my grandmother with my uncle, and there's one where he was standing up, and there's another one where he's squatting down next to her holding a dog. And I'm like, it was a totally different angle of him. I'd only seen his face, and now here's his body. And I'm looking at the picture and I'm like, this is my brother Anthony. They are so exactly the same. I'll have to send you guys the pictures. We did a recreation of my mom and him, and
I love
put it
those.
next to it.
Yeah.
It's, I got to send it to you. It's amazing. The way my brother's a little like bow-legged. He stands like this, the shape of his face, the shape of his body, his nose, his hair. We all would have gone to our graves never knowing that. If we had not just come across this one photo. My brother's identically shaped in every way to his namesake.
I love that.
What is that? Like,
I don't know.
What is that?
We're going to have to expand into other episodes to explore this some more.
Right.
And, you know, we've done projects with our listeners before. Like this could be a really fun project for some of us to start taking on. Angela, you got to get those stories off of your hard drive that somebody could spill a drink on, and then it'd be gone forever, you know?
I find that people need...
Oh, no, it's broken. It needs
Oh,
like an
perfect.
expert. It's an old computer. It's like just an old busted up.
Yeah.
There's people who do that. I find like with the workshop that I do is like when people kind of like sign up and commit, you know, that's what they do it for, because they know like they need a little bit of a push and an inspiration and a focus. So a challenge could be similar like that.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was my father.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was my father passing away. I was like, this is my energy to do this.
Yeah. To be able to give it to your, and here's the other thing is when you get married, it's not just your stories. Because your children, I'm like, I know these things, and here's my family, here's all this information. Okay, but you're 50% these other people. So like, your genetics get diluted, and then all of a sudden, now you're tapping into something else.
Shay, you were in Sicily. We had that. I mean, no, we're out of time, but you had that experience with us when we went to Lipari.
Yeah,
and we met my husband's like third or second cousin.
Yep.
And he'd never met like another ancestor from Alacuti, the remote island where a volcano in Sicily that his family's from. And we met him for an ice cream or a glass of wine, and the Elliots were there, and we talked to him, and he was tearing up seeing pictures of his mother.
Yeah.
With my in-law, my husband's grandparents. And it was really, that's a whole new area for us to explore.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that. All right.
Amazing.
Well, Dolores,
Well,
tell people where they can find you. Yeah.
You can find me on
Substack.
Yes. Shay and I are on Love and Substack. I have a publication called The Tradition of Living Beautifully. And I really I do a lot of writing on there, kind of this topic and others. I am also on Instagram at Dolores_Alfieri_Taranto. Every time I say it, I'm like, you must change that handle. I'm sure you guys will link to it. Yes, I'm on Instagram, where I have a very vocal and passionate love-hate relationship with the app and social media in general.
Mostly hate.
Mostly hate. And the website is bellafigurapodcast.com. I also have a podcast called Bella Figura, The Tradition of Living Beautifully. and both Shay and Angela have been guests, and those are two of the best and my favorite episodes. Not even just saying that.
Wonderful.
That was a long time
All
ago
right.
now.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
I know. Well,
Years.
I will list all of those in the show notes.
Thank you.
For everyone so they can find you easily. Thank you so much for coming on.
So good.
This was beautiful.
I love you guys.
And I
Thank
hope
you
really
for having
inspiring.
me.
We love
Yeah.
you.
We'll have you back. All right, everyone. See you next
All
week.
right.
Cheers.
Cheers.